There are people who don't want you to realize your true power. Not because you don't deserve it, but because once you do, they will no longer be able to control you. You may have felt it before. When you started changing, when you stopped being easily manipulated, when you began saying no to things that didn't serve you, suddenly, certain people around you became uncomfortable. They didn't like it. Not because you were wrong, but because you were no longer easy to control. True strength doesn't need validation. You don't have to shout to prove you are powerful. The moment you become calm, self-assured, and no longer seek approval from others, you are already stronger than most. And that is why some people fear you, even when you've done nothing at all. They sense something you may not even see in yourself yet, that you don't rely on them, that you don't need them to survive, that you can stand alone and still be unshaken. And that terrifies them. And because of that fear, they will try to pull you down. They will make you doubt yourself, make you think you're wrong, that you're too different, that you should tone it down to fit in. But what's the truth? You are not the problem. They are the ones who feel insecure in your presence. You don't need to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. It's time for you to see yourself as clearly as they do, a person so powerful that they can't control. Have you ever felt like someone tried to dim your light because they feared your strength? Share your thoughts. 1. Your presence speaks louder than words. There are two kinds of power in this world. The kind that demands attention, the loud, the boastful, the ones who try too hard to be seen. And then there's the kind that cannot be ignored, the kind that walks into a space and shifts the air without a single word. That's the power they fear. The power you may not even recognize in yourself yet. You've seen it before. A person walks into a negotiation room, a workplace, a social gathering, and without saying anything, they command attention. Not because they are loud, not because they demand respect, but because something about them draws the room in. Others turn to look, pause in their conversation, instinctively sense a presence that disrupts the usual flow of things. They don't need to announce themselves. They don't need to prove anything. They just are. This is what makes people uncomfortable. Real power doesn't need to seek validation. It doesn't need permission. It exists independently of others' opinions. And because of that, it terrifies those who have spent their whole lives trying to gain approval, trying to fit in, trying to be seen. Your presence, your quiet confidence, your unwillingness to conform to their expectations, it shakes them. You may not have fully realized it, but some people see this in you before you even see it in yourself. They sense that you are different, that you are not easily influenced, that you cannot be controlled the way others can. And when they realize they have no hold over you, they react. Some will be drawn to you, instinctively respecting you. Others will resent you, try to tear you down, attempt to break the calm you carry. They will test you, prod at your confidence, throw subtle challenges your way, not because you have done anything wrong, but because they need to reassure themselves that you are not as strong as you appear. If you have ever felt a sudden shift in how people treat you, this is why. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop needing permission, when you stop playing the game of proving your worth, people notice. Some become nervous, some grow quiet, some lash out, trying to pull you back into a version of yourself that was more manageable for them, because your presence alone has changed something. And they don't know how to handle it. Real power is not about how much you say, how much you show, or how much you push. It is about how much you don't need to do. The most powerful figures in history were not those who begged for attention, but those who carried themselves with a certainty so strong that others had no choice but to take notice. The greatest Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, as the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, never needed to boast about his status. He wrote to himself, reminding himself to stay humble, to remain in control, to never be ruled by the need for external recognition. True strength is in self-mastery, and self-mastery is in how you move through the world, unaffected by the noise around you. When you walk into a situation, people are watching. Not just what you say, but how you stand, how you hold yourself, how you react to discomfort. They notice the way you don't rush, the way you take your time before responding, the way you don't try to fill silence with nervous words. They notice that you do not react the way they expect you to, that you do not seek to impress them, that you do not fight for their approval, that you do not operate on the same frequency as those who are desperate to be liked. This unsettles them. Some people will try to challenge you just to see if they can shake you. They will interrupt you mid-sentence just to test if you lose composure. They will dismiss your ideas just to see if you scramble for validation. They will make comments designed to make you feel small, hoping that you will shrink, hoping that you will over-explain, hoping that you will need their approval to feel certain again. But if you stay firm, if you remain unfazed, if you refuse to play the game, they will feel powerless. Because without your reaction, without your energy feeding them, they have nothing. The way you carry yourself is a message. It tells the world how you expect to be treated. If you walk with uncertainty, people will treat you as uncertain. If you move with doubt, they will question your value. But if you step with purpose, if you hold yourself like someone who does not need permission, if you sit in silence without rushing to fill it, people will notice and they will treat you accordingly. So ask yourself, how do you show up? Are you apologizing for your existence in small ways? Are you over-explaining, over-justifying, over-compensating? Are you allowing others to dictate how you feel, how you think, how you move? Or are you holding your ground, allowing your presence to speak before you do? This is not about arrogance. This is not about dominance. This is about knowing who you are so deeply that the world around you has no choice but to recognize it. This is about understanding that real power is not in shouting, but in the calm certainty of someone who does not need to prove themselves. When you stop chasing approval, when you stop reacting to every challenge, when you stop seeking permission, everything changes. People will treat you differently. Some will admire you, some will fear you, some will try to break you, but none of them will be able to ignore you. Your next move is simple. Stop explaining. Stop overthinking. Stop waiting for someone to give you permission to be powerful. Own your space, move with certainty, and let your presence speak louder than words. 2. A man who needs no approval can't be controlled. They told him it was impossible. They told him it was a waste of time. They told him he needed a real job, a real career, a real future. But he didn't listen. His name is David. He loves art, painting, music, creativity. It's what makes him feel alive. But where he grew up, people didn't respect artists. They called it a hobby, not a career. They told him to get serious, to follow the safe path, to fit in. For a while, he doubted himself. He questioned if they were right, if maybe, just maybe, he was chasing something that would never bring him success. But then, he made a decision. A simple but life-changing decision. He stopped asking for permission. He stopped looking for approval. He chose to believe in himself, even when no one else did. At first, it was hard. The path wasn't easy. He struggled. He worked late nights, took small commissions, learned every skill he could. But he kept going. And then, something happened. The same people who doubted him, they started to admire him. The same voices that told him he was wasting his time, they suddenly wanted to know how he did it. Because he had done what they were too afraid to do. He had chosen himself. This is the power of a person who doesn't need approval. When you stop asking for permission, the world has no choice but to take you seriously. Think about your own life. How many decisions have you hesitated on because you were worried about what people would think? How many times have you silenced yourself, played small, held back, because the fear of judgment was louder than your own voice? That ends today. If you need approval, you can be controlled. And if you can be controlled, you will never be free. You see, society conditions you to seek validation. From childhood, you're rewarded for compliance. They tell you what's acceptable, what's respectable, what's worth your time. They don't want you to think for yourself. They don't want you to step outside the lines. Because the moment you do, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable people, they can't be controlled. That's why people panic when you stop seeking their approval. That's why they try to shame you, guilt you, pressure you into conformity. It's not because they care about you. It's because they fear what your independence represents. When you don't need their validation, they lose their grip on you. Look around. How many people live their entire lives in quiet submission, following rules they never agreed to, chasing dreams that were never their own? How many people work jobs they hate, stay in relationships that drain them, live inside expectations that suffocate them because they are too afraid to step out of line? They aren't living, they are performing. And that is why they need you to stay in line too. Because if you step out, if you refuse to play along, if you decide to carve your own path, they will have to face the reality that they could have done the same. And nothing scares them more than that. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoics, ruled an empire, yet he never sought approval from the masses. He understood that to be ruled by others' opinions is to live a life that isn't your own. Epictetus, once a slave, became a philosopher not because he waited for permission, but because he refused to let his circumstances define him. And now it's your turn. So let me ask you, what would you do if no one's opinion mattered? If no one was watching? If no one could judge you? If no one had the power to influence your decisions? What would you choose? Would you leave the job that drains your soul? Would you speak up for what you believe in? Would you finally pursue that passion, that goal, that version of yourself that you've buried under years of conditioning? The truth is, you don't need permission to be great. No one is going to hand you an invitation to step into your power. No one is going to come along and say, now you are worthy. You have to decide that for yourself. And when you do, expect resistance. Expect doubt. Expect people to challenge you, criticize you, try to pull you back down. That is how you know you are doing something right. Because weak people need approval. They need someone to tell them what's possible, what's acceptable, what's allowed. But the strong make their own rules. David didn't wait for the world to tell him he was good enough. He worked, he struggled, he built his path from the ground up. And now he lives by his own terms. The same people who doubted him, they respect him now. Not because he proved them wrong, but because he proved himself right. And that's what you must do. So stop explaining, stop justifying, stop waiting for permission. The world does not reward the hesitant. It rewards those who move, who take action, who decide that they are enough, even when no one else believes it yet. Be that person. Be the one who doesn't need approval. Because the moment you do, you become unstoppable. 3. Control yourself and they can't control you. There is a game being played at all times. You may not see it, but it's happening. A game of control. A game of manipulation. A game where the one who loses their composure first loses everything. People will test you. They will push your buttons, provoke you, try to shake you. They will insult you, dismiss you, undermine you. And the moment you react the way they want, you hand them power. You show them they can control you. It happens in business, a negotiation where one side remains calm while the other grows frustrated. Guess who wins? It happens in relationships. One person keeps their emotions in check, the other loses control. Guess who holds the upper hand? It happens in everyday life. The driver who cuts you off, the coworker who tries to get under your skin, the person who feeds you just enough disrespect to make you snap. And the moment you do, they win. Because control is not about who speaks the loudest. It's about who remains unmoved. You see, most people live as slaves to their emotions. They let anger dictate their actions. They let frustration drive their decisions. They let the words of others pull them into battles they never needed to fight. But the one who controls himself, he is the one who cannot be controlled. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, understood this deeply. He ruled an empire, but he ruled himself first. He wrote to himself, reminding his own mind, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not philosophy. This is war strategy. The world belongs to those who can remain still while others tremble. Those who can keep their focus while others lose theirs. Those who can stand in fire and not be burned. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you. Maybe it was a colleague, a family member, a stranger online. They threw an insult, an attack, a challenge. And what did they want? A reaction, a loss of control. Proof that they could make you move, make you bend, make you dance to their tune. But what happens when you don't? What happens when you look at them, nod, and walk away? What happens when you refuse to give them what they want? They panic, they scramble, they feel powerless, because their entire strategy relied on your emotional weakness. And when you don't give it to them, they have nothing. That's why controlling yourself is the most powerful weapon you will ever own. They can try to provoke you. They can try to drag you into their chaos. But if you refuse, if you remain unshaken, they will exhaust themselves fighting a battle that only exists in their own mind. Now let's bring this into real life. Imagine a high-stakes meeting. Two business partners are in conflict. One is pounding the table, raising his voice, demanding control. The other, sitting still, calm, observing. The one yelling thinks he's winning because he's louder, but in reality, he's losing, because the one who stays in control will be the one making the final decision. Or picture a heated argument. One person is throwing words like daggers, trying to get a reaction. The other person simply listens. And when they finally speak, they do it slowly, with certainty, with clarity. And suddenly, the one who is shouting feels foolish, because power is not about noise, it's about control. And this is something you can master. First, slow everything down. The moment you feel yourself getting pulled in, pause, breathe, do nothing. Silence is a weapon. Most people rush to fill it, to defend themselves, to react. Let them. While they scramble, you remain still. Second, train your mind to see provocation as a test, not an attack. When someone tries to trigger you, recognize it for what it is, a weak man's attempt at control, and the moment you see it, you strip it of its power. Third, never let someone else's emotions dictate your own. Just because they are angry does not mean you must be. Just because they panic does not mean you must. Just because they raise their voice does not mean you need to meet them there. Control yourself, and you control the situation. And here's the final truth. Most people will never master this. They will spend their lives reacting, defending, explaining, proving. They will fight battles that were never worth their time. They will let their emotions be used against them. They will live like puppets, controlled by strings they don't even see. But not you. Not anymore. You see, they only have power over you if you give it to them. And today, you take it back. Next time someone tests you, remember this. Your reaction is your choice. Your emotions are your responsibility. And the moment you master yourself, you become untouchable. 4. Your silence is their nightmare. Have you ever noticed how some people can't stand silence? How they desperately try to fill the air with noise, explanations, justifications, anything to avoid facing the weight of their own thoughts? They argue, they provoke, they throw insults like bait, waiting for you to snap, waiting for you to engage, waiting for you to give them the reaction they need to feel in control. But when you don't, when you just look at them, expressionless, unfazed, unshaken, that's when they start to panic. Because nothing terrifies a manipulative person more than a target that won't react. Your silence is not emptiness, it is power. It forces them to face themselves. It forces them to realize that their words, their games, their need for control, none of it works on you. Think about it. When was the last time someone tried to pull you into a pointless argument? Maybe it was a coworker who wanted to prove something. Maybe it was a friend or family member trying to guilt trip you. Maybe it was a stranger online, attacking your beliefs, baiting you into a fight you never needed to have. They wanted you to get emotional. They wanted you to defend yourself. They wanted you to lose your center so they could feel superior. But the moment you stay silent, the moment you refuse to engage, they lose control. They might laugh it off, act like they don't care. But inside, they're scrambling. They were prepared for a battle, but now they're swinging at empty air. They don't know what to do next. They don't know how to handle a situation where their usual tactics don't work. Because real power doesn't need to prove itself. That's why history remembers the ones who stood firm while others crumbled. The warriors who didn't flinch. The leaders who didn't explain. The thinkers who let their actions, not their words, define them. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, could have crushed any of his critics. Instead, he practiced restraint. He understood that reacting to fools makes you one of them. He mastered himself, and because of that, no one could control him. Epictetus, once a slave, refused to let insults shake him. He knew that words had no real power unless he allowed them to. He He mastered himself, and because of that, no one could take his dignity away. Now, look at your own life. How often have you felt the need to justify yourself to people who don't even matter? How often have you wasted your breath trying to explain yourself to those who have already made up their minds? Let them think what they want. Let them talk. Let them fill the silence with their insecurities, their projections, their desperate need to be right. You don't owe them your energy, because the moment you stop defending yourself, you stop playing their game. And the moment you stop playing, you've already won. It's uncomfortable for them, isn't it? Your silence forces them to sit with their own thoughts, their own failures, their own lack of control. It exposes them. That's why they keep pushing. They need you to react. They need to know they still have some hold over you. But what happens when you refuse? When you stare back at them and say nothing? They start doubting themselves. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe they overreacted. Maybe they don't have the power they thought they did. And once that thought enters their mind, they've already lost. This is how you win battles without lifting a finger. In negotiations, the one who speaks the least holds the most power. In arguments, the one who doesn't react remains in control. In life, the one who doesn't seek validation is the one who commands respect. People are addicted to validation. They need confirmation that they are right, that they are strong, that they are in control. When you refuse to give them that, they become lost. A person who is desperate for validation will always try to drag you into their world, into their arguments, into their chaos. They need you to engage so they can feel important, so they can feel like they matter. The only way to truly defeat them is to give them nothing. No validation, no approval, no reaction, just silence. This doesn't mean you let people walk over you. It doesn't mean you accept disrespect. It means you understand that not every battle is worth fighting. That some fights are won not by striking back, but by standing still. It means knowing when to walk away, when to let your silence be your answer, when to let others reveal themselves without your help. It means controlling your own emotions so that no one else can. A man who argues with fools becomes one. A man who constantly explains himself to those who will never understand wastes his breath. A man who reacts emotionally to every provocation hands over his power. But a man who knows when to be silent, when to let others exhaust themselves, when to hold his ground without engaging, that man is untouchable. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their chaos, don't take the bait. Don't argue. Don't defend. Just look at them, smile if you must, and walk away. Because your silence is their nightmare. 5. You've already won. Because you stopped playing here. He thought he had to prove himself. He believed success was a competition, that if he could just win against the right people, he would finally feel worthy. So he played the game. He worked harder, pushed further, spent more. He bought the expensive suit, the luxury car, the invitation to exclusive events, where men measured each other by the weight of their wallets. Every conversation was a silent battle of status. Who had the most power? Who had the most influence? Who was rising and who was falling? He convinced himself that this was what success looked like. He convinced himself that this was what winning felt like. But no matter how hard he pushed, it was never enough. There was always someone ahead of him. Someone with more connections, someone with more money, someone who played the game better, who had started earlier, who had advantages he would never have. And so he kept chasing, kept competing, kept trying to prove that he belonged. But deep down, something felt wrong. He could feel it every time he forced himself into conversations he didn't care about, with people he didn't respect, discussing things that didn't actually matter to him. He could feel it every time he spent money he didn't need to, just to keep up appearances, just to make sure no one questioned whether he was really successful. He could feel it every time he looked at himself in the mirror and wondered why, after all of this effort, he still didn't feel like he had won. Then, one day, he stopped. He asked himself a question he had been too afraid to ask. What am I really chasing, and why? And in that moment, everything became clear. He wasn't chasing success. He was chasing validation. He wasn't working to build something real. He was working to be seen. And the second he realized that, the second he stopped needing the approval of others, the second he stepped back and decided that he no longer cared about playing their game, he won. Because that's the truth they don't want you to know. The people who chase recognition, who compete for attention, who measure their worth by how they compare to others, they are not free. They are trapped. Trapped in an endless race where the finish line never comes. Trapped in a competition where winning only means a new, bigger challenge to conquer. Trapped in a life where their value is always determined by someone else. And the moment you step away, the moment you realize you don't need to prove anything, you become untouchable. Most people will never understand this. They are too deep in the game. They have been taught that success is about being seen, about being acknowledged, about winning at all costs. They don't realize that the greatest power doesn't come from proving yourself. It comes from not needing to. Think about the strongest people you have ever met. Were they the ones constantly advertising their success? Were they the ones always competing? Always trying to be the loudest? Always making sure everyone knew their status? Or were they the ones who moved in silence, who carried themselves with quiet confidence, who didn't need to announce their power, because their power spoke for itself? There is a reason why the most respected people in any room are often the ones who say the least. There is a reason why those who don't seek attention are the ones others admire most. There's a reason why the quietest, calmest, most self-assured people seem to have an energy that draws others in without effort. Because they don't play. And that terrifies those who do. People expect you to seek validation. They expect you to crave approval, to measure your success by how well you fit into their expectations. And when you don't, when you step back, when you choose peace over proving, it unsettles them. They don't know what to do with someone who doesn't compete. They don't know how to handle someone who doesn't need their recognition. They don't know how to control someone who isn't chasing the same things they are. And that's when the attacks come. They'll say you've given up, that you lack ambition, that you are afraid to compete. But what they won't admit, what they can't admit, is that they envy your freedom. Because deep down, they wish they could do the same. But they can't. They need the race. They need the noise. They need the endless cycle of competition to distract them from the truth. The truth that terrifies them more than anything. The truth that none of it matters. That's why stepping away is the most powerful move you can make. The moment you stop playing, you win. And this isn't just about wealth. This isn't just about business. This is about life. How many times have you found yourself trying to prove your worth? How many times have you played along in a game you didn't even want to be in? How many times have you measured yourself against someone else's standards, only to feel empty afterward? Enough. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to seek approval. You don't need to play their game just because they expect you to. The moment you stop, the moment you choose yourself, you've already won. So let them compete, let them chase, let them seek validation in things that don't last. You have something greater. You have something they will never understand. The power to walk away. The power to be free. The power to define success on your own terms. Because the only way to truly win is to refuse to play. 6. You remind them of their own weakness. Some people will resent you, not because you have wronged them, but because your existence forces them to face something they'd rather avoid, their own weakness. You don't have to say a word. You don't have to prove anything. Simply by being who you are, by standing firm in your truth, by refusing to shrink yourself to make them comfortable, you expose the parts of themselves they've tried to bury. You've seen it before. The coworker who mocks your discipline because it reminds him of his own laziness. The friend who rolls his eyes at your ambition because he gave up on his own dreams long ago. The relative who calls you lucky to downplay the years of sacrifice you've made. These people aren't really attacking you. They are attacking the reflection they see when they look at you, the version of themselves they failed to become. It's an unspoken reality in human nature. When people see someone who is strong, someone who is driven, someone who refuses to accept mediocrity, they feel something shift inside, a discomfort, a quiet realization that they too could have been more, that they had the same chances, the same choices, but instead of rising, they remained where they were. Instead of pushing forward, they stayed still. And nothing is more painful than realizing you've been your own greatest obstacle. This is why some people will challenge you. Not because they genuinely believe you are wrong, but because your presence makes them question everything they've accepted as truth. When you commit to growth, you reveal those who have settled. When you choose discipline, you expose those who have chosen excuses. When you refuse to conform, you remind them that they were never really trapped. They were just afraid. And that kind of realization is unbearable. So what do? They project, they mock, they diminish, they frame your strength as arrogance. They call your focus obsession. They twist your confidence into something negative, something unnatural, something they can dismiss. Because if they can convince themselves that you are the problem, they don't have to deal with the truth staring them in the face. Think about the last time someone tried to make you feel small. Maybe it was subtle, a backhanded compliment, a dismissive laugh, an attempt to plant doubt in your mind. Maybe it was direct, an attack on your choices, an effort to drag you into an argument, a deliberate attempt to shake your confidence. Either way, the message was the same. Stop being who you are. You are making me uncomfortable. But here's what they don't understand. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their insecurities are not your burden to carry. You are not here to shrink so they can feel bigger. You are not here to slow down so they don't have to rush to catch up. You are not here to silence yourself so they don't have to question why they never spoke up. You are here to live fully, unapologetically, powerfully. And yes, that will make people uncomfortable. That will make people angry. That will make some people do everything in their power to pull you back down, to keep you at a level where they can still feel superior. But none of that is your concern, because their battle is not with you, it is with themselves. The moment you understand this, everything changes. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending your choices. You stop wasting energy on people who are not interested in growth, but only in staying comfortable. You move forward without looking back. And in doing so, you do the very thing they feared the most. You prove that their excuses were never real. That they, too, could have chosen differently. That nothing was ever stopping them except for their own fear. And that is why they hate you. They don't hate your success. They hate what it says about their failure. They don't hate your discipline. They hate what it says about their weakness. They don't hate your independence. They hate the fact that they are still seeking approval. But here's the final truth. Some will see you and be inspired. Some will recognize what you've done and use it as proof that they, too, can change. Some will rise instead of resent. And those are the people who matter. So let the others talk. Let them gossip. Let them project. Let them waste their energy trying to convince themselves that you are the problem. You don't need to fight back. You don't need to convince them of anything. Just keep going. Keep growing. Keep living in a way that forces them to confront their own reflection. Because whether they love you for it or hate you for it, one thing is certain. They will never be able to ignore you. Self-respect lasts. Popularity fades. My boss was not the most liked man in the company. He never tried to be. He didn't go out of his way to make people comfortable, to tell them what they wanted to hear, to soften reality just to keep the peace. He didn't bend to pressure, didn't make decisions based on what was easy or popular. He made them based on what was right. When employees asked for special treatment, he refused. When higher-ups pressured him to prioritize profits over ethics, he declined. When conflicts arose, he didn't take sides. He stood by principles. At first, people resented him for it. They whispered behind his back, called him cold, said he was too rigid. They wanted him to be more agreeable, more willing to play along. But over time, something changed. The same people who had criticized him started to respect him. They realized that while he wasn't always what they wanted, he was exactly what they needed. They saw that his decisions, though unpopular, were fair. That his word, though sometimes sharp, was honest. That his leadership, though demanding, was unshakable. And when he finally left the company, no one spoke about how friendly he was. No one remembered him for small talk or meaningless gestures. They remembered his integrity. They remembered that he was a man they could trust. Because popularity is an illusion. Respect is a foundation. Most people don't understand this. They spend their lives trying to be liked. They smile when they don't mean it. They agree when they should disagree. They avoid hard conversations, soften the truth, try to fit in, try to be accepted. And for what? A momentary nod of approval, a temporary sense of belonging, a fragile acceptance that disappears the second they stop pleasing others. This is why so many people feel empty. They've spent so much time shaping themselves into what others want that they don't even know who they are anymore. But there is another way. A harder way, yes, but a way that leads to something real. You don't need to be liked, you need to be respected. And respect is not given to those who follow the crowd. It is given to those who stand apart, to those who have the courage to say what others won't, to those who make the right choice even when it's the hardest one. Look around. How many of the most respected figures in history were universally liked in their time? Marcus Aurelius did not rule Rome by seeking approval. He ruled by embodying discipline, wisdom, and control. He didn't make decisions based on what was popular. He made them based on what would last. Epictetus, once a slave, never sought admiration. He sought truth. And because of that, his words outlived kings. People will test you. They will push you. They will pressure you to compromise, to be more agreeable, to make them comfortable. And if your goal is to be liked, you will fold. You will adjust yourself to fit their expectations. You will sacrifice what you stand for in exchange for momentary approval. But if your goal is to be respected, you will do what is right, no matter the cost. And yes, in the short term, you may lose people. You may face criticism. You may be called difficult, stubborn, unyielding. But in the long run, the very people who judge you will come to admire you. Because deep down, even those who resent strength still respect it. Even those who dislike you will acknowledge your certainty. And in the end, respect is the only thing that lasts. Think about your own life. How many times have you stayed silent when you should have spoken up? How many times have you agreed to things you didn't believe in just to avoid conflict? How many times have you worried about what people think, only to realize later that their opinions never really mattered? Enough. You don't need their approval. You don't need their acceptance. You don't need to fit into a mold that was never built for you. The only thing you need is to live in a way that, years from now, when people speak your name, they don't say he was nice. They say he was solid. Because popularity fades. Respect endures. Choose accordingly. 8. You are the storm, not the shelter. Some people spend their entire lives trying to avoid the storm. They tiptoe around conflict, seek comfort over challenge, and mold themselves into whatever shape keeps them safe. They shrink, they adapt, they become small enough to fit into places they were never meant to be. They think that by being agreeable, by making themselves predictable, by staying out of the way, they will be protected. But what they don't realize is that safety is an illusion. The world does not reward the ones who hide. It does not remember those who made themselves invisible. It remembers those who moved with force, who refused to be controlled, who created change instead of fearing it. And that is why you are not the shelter. You are the storm. You were not made to play small. You were not made to be agreeable at all costs. You were not made to live your life according to the expectations of people who do not even understand you. You were made to disrupt, to challenge, to push past limits. The moment you stop running from the storm and realize that you are the storm, everything changes. Think about a time when you tried to be what others wanted. Maybe you held your tongue when you should have spoken. Maybe you downplayed your ambitions to make others comfortable. Maybe you chose stability over growth because growth meant stepping into the unknown. And what did it bring you? Did it bring peace? Or did it leave you feeling hollow, disconnected, restless? Because deep down, you knew. You knew you were capable of more. You knew that the life you had settled for was not the one you were meant to live. You knew that every time you held back, you betrayed yourself. And that's why the storm inside you never died. It waited, it watched, and now it's time to let it rise. This is what they don't want. They want you to stay predictable, to stay small, to follow the rules that were never designed for you. Because the moment you decide to step into your power, you become a force they can no longer ignore. That is why people fear those who move with certainty. That is why those who dare to think for themselves, who dare to break the cycle, who dare to choose their own path, are seen as dangerous. Because the world is built on control, on obedience, on making sure that most people never realize how powerful they truly are. Look at history. The ones who changed the world were never the ones who played it safe. They were the ones who walked into the storm and became it. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome with discipline and control, not because he sought shelter from hardship, but because he faced it head-on. Epictetus endured slavery and still rose above his circumstances, not because he was given permission, but because he took control of his own mind. And now look at your own life. Where have you been playing small? Where have you been choosing comfort over courage? Where have you been allowing others to define your worth? Enough. You don't need their approval. You don't need permission. You don't need to explain yourself to people who will never understand what you were meant for. The storm does not apologize for its strength. The ocean does not ask permission to rise, and neither should you. People will tell you to be careful, to be realistic, to slow down, to think about how your actions affect others, to stay inside the boundaries they've drawn for you. But here's the truth. They don't actually care about your well-being. They care about control. They care about making sure you don't disrupt the comfort they have built for themselves. Let them be comfortable. Let them stay where they are. You have a different path. You have something inside you that refuses to be silenced. You were not made to sit quietly while life passes by. You were made to move, to build, to create impact. So stop waiting. Stop apologizing. Stop seeking approval. You are not the shelter. You are the storm. The moment you own that, the moment you step fully into your power, you will realize something incredible. No one was stopping you but yourself. Power is not something you ask for. It's something you claim. Not through words, not through approval, but through the way you carry yourself, through the way you choose to live. Most people spend their lives seeking validation, trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for them. But the ones who stand out, the ones who move with purpose, who refuse to be controlled, those are the ones who reshape the world around them. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need permission to be strong. The moment you realize this, the moment you stop playing by their rules, everything changes. You become unreadable, untouchable, unshakable. They will fear you. They will test you. They will try to break you. But that only proves one thing. They know how powerful you are, even if you don't see it yet. So take these lessons and apply them. Practice restraint. Master your emotions. Walk with presence. Let your actions, not your words, define you. Every day is an opportunity to sharpen yourself, to build a foundation so solid that nothing can shake it. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt this shift in your life? A moment when you realized you no longer needed approval? Share your story in the comments, because your journey might just be the inspiration someone else needs.